Hello, gamers from around the world. This is Boxenberger, the video game enthusiast from Germany, and I would like to welcome you to a very, very special episode of the World of Gaming. Dutch, I don't think we have ever done a show on a Tuesday. It might be a first,
Nope.
right?
Yes, definitely.
So, man, are you as excited as I am for today?
Oh, most definitely, and it's extra special because these chaps are from my hometown, which was a new one for me from Hoofddorp. So unexpected, but equally awesome.
Yeah, man. We have special guests. We have Keoken, makers of Deliver Us Mars and Deliver Us the Moon. As a special guest here today. And of course, we will focus here, obviously, on the upcoming Deliver Us Mars, coming on February 2nd to basically everything PC, on Steam, Epic Store, on PS4, PS5, Xbox One, and Xbox Series consoles. I hope I didn't forget anything. But yeah, let me welcome these fine gentlemen here. We have the CEO of Keoken, Paul. How do I pronounce your last name? Dietman or Dietman?
Both ways are fine with me. Like you can say Dietman, which is more Dutch. Dietman becomes a little bit more English, but it's all good.
All right. Welcome to you and technical artist Daniel Tolkar. Welcome to the show.
Thanks
very much.
Yeah, thanks for having us. Happy to be here.
Oh, it's awesome that you guys made it. And yeah, let me also welcome our fantastic community. This chat is already filling up. A big welcome, of course, to everyone who's watching us live here today. And of course, to the hundreds of listeners around the podcast services on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts. You know where to find the World of Gaming. So today we want to make it count. And usually, gentlemen, we introduce our guests by asking them a couple of questions about their gaming history. So before we talk about Deliver Us Mars, we will have a couple of rapid fire questions for you. So what was the first game or game console that you played on? Where did gaming start for you?
I think it was the Nintendo, actually. Although my brain goes always to the PlayStation 1 as something that I really developed a passion for games for, but the first one I think I touched was the Nintendo with my friends, definitely.
Nice.
You?
Yeah, I have
Daniel?
also played a lot on the Nintendo 64. I think that was some of my first. And also on PC. When I was really small, I used to play a lot of Tim, the Incredible Machine. I don't know if you know that game. It's like super old and you had to make all these contraptions. I think that was some of my first gaming experience.
That's cool. And what are some of your favorite games of all time?
Oh my God, that's a tough one. All time, I would think I really enjoyed the last God of War. Yeah, I really enjoyed that. The way they reinvented the series. And if I would have to go for most played, I think I've played Rocket League the most.
Oh.
I think I've got about 600 hours in Rocket League, which, yeah, I really enjoy it.
Oh, that's even more than my Age of Empires addiction, so kudos.
No, for me, I guess it's always like these rich, like big experiences. So classics like Tomb Raider kind of started off with that. We're saying, wow, we can make like this huge Indiana Jones experience from the beginning. So I still love the series very much. But lately, of course, the narrative, like The Last of Us 2, really touched my heart in how you can create a piece of art out of a game. Really, that's kind of very controversial to a lot of extents. But it's it's like the high fidelity of things and the richness of these worlds are always speaking to me. So it can be probably the next game that still needs to be made will be my favorite.
So, nice, very nice.
Awesome stuff. Yeah, I was going to ask as well for both of yourselves, what it is that got you both into game development. I know everyone's story is a little bit different, but how did you both get into that in the first place?
I think it started off with my brother and I playing in the back garden. So we had like a little camcorder recording kind of stuff like Star Wars and 007, but then our own take to it. We did our like little original films, and that developed into eventually binding forces, and then because it's very playful in the beginning, you're just playing as a kid and you're trying to relive kind of an imagination that you have in your head, or maybe the cool films that you have been seeing. And very naturally, I think we made the step into saying, hey, let's maybe create something of our own. So it started with like little comic books to, I know, audio tapes that we were doing. So we just recorded some audio tapes and stories about our imaginary fluffy toys and stuff. And that became films, and that became eventually small games. I think my brother was doing game development at the time. I was doing more audio engineering. And then we combined these forces, like, hey, how can we create these auditory worlds, combine it with graphics, and make it really believable? So yeah, I guess by just playing around, by just being a kid.
That's
Yeah,
cool.
you? And for me, I started going to school for media and culture, which is really focused on TV and movies. But after about 6 months, I realized this is too theoretical for me and too hands off. Like, it feels very distant. So then I decided to study game development, the same study as Koen did, his brother. And well, at that point, you were kind of starting up the business, and at some point, I had to get an internship. And I got an internship at Keoken for 6 months, and then I went back to school and like, oh, now I'm back at school. I'm kind of, it feels off, you know? So 6 months of school passed by. Yeah, game development, I learned a bit more. And then I needed to do another internship, which I did earlier than what I was supposed to. But yeah, I wanted to do it because I wanted to work. And then did another 6 months internship. And then during that summer holidays, I think Koen asked me, like, would you want to come work for us? And I didn't have to think about that for a long time. So yeah, then I said, yes, of course, I'd love to just start working. So I quit my study and just became technical artist at Keoken. And that's how I rolled into this whole mess.
Well, judging from the first game, it's anything else than a mess. We are big fans of Deliver Us the Moon. I actually went back to my review, and I quote now from that review, and I said back then, Deliver Us the Moon captures the loneliness in space in a perfect way. So yeah, where now we are almost 3 years later. Deliver Us Mars, the sequel, is going to come out soon. You made the hard decision to delay it. I can imagine it wasn't easy. If it's okay with you, I just make you a little bit smaller because I captured some of the already released footage, and I have to change, of course, the overlay as well. So there we go. And then we just watch a couple of the reveal trailers and story trailers in parallel while we chat. So in case someone hasn't seen the footage yet, they can watch it. So yeah, Deliver Us Mars now. When did the development start, and what was the decision to make like a sequel and not another standalone story?
Yeah, good question. I think it's the people that were playing Deliver Us the Moon, and of course we were learning to create a company and also developing a game at the same time. And most of us were very young and very green, very naive, trying to create this rich 3D experience. So what we witnessed is that a lot of people really love what we have been creating, but they wanted more. So some people said, hey, it was on the short side of things. Like, we love the experience, but we want to stay in this environment. So logically, we wanted to do this like bigger experience. And while Deliver Us the Moon kind of set the stage and kind of what the ambition of the studio was, Mars is kind of trying to reach that ambition at one point. So like, hey, what do we actually want? And all the things that we missed or that we learned from Deliver Us the Moon, how can we put that into an even bigger spectacle? And of course, since you have a game like that and you have been creating assets in this world and also the storylines, you can of course start a completely new IP, like a new idea of a game. But we had so much, so we could build from that and create everything that we did wrong or which we could do better into this experience. So rather logical to go for a sequel.
Yeah. Makes
That's
sense.
awesome.
Makes sense.
And has the team grown much since the first one into the second one? Have you had to ramp up that and get more people in to realize that ambition?
Yeah, I think we you could say that around 15-ish people have been creating Deliver Us the Moon. Of course, there's some peaks, so it's a little bit of a higher number. Then sometimes it was a little bit of a lower number. But you could say that experience is created with that. You can also count kind of the years of development, which is kind of hard to pinpoint because we were busy for 4 years, maybe even a little bit longer. But did we really create in 4 years Deliver Us the Moon? I don't know. There was a lot of like learning experience and setting up a company. So learning time, I would say. But now, I think we ramped it up to 30 to 40 people, 40 people really at tops when we have some extra freelancers, and we call our SWAT team that really makes sure that we can get the high fidelity that we want to. But you could say it definitely doubled in size. And then on peaks, it even more than doubled.
Nice.
Sweet. Yeah. Does it also more or less translate to the game? So is like the game itself like double the size, or what are some of the ambitions there in how you want to grow like Deliver Us Mars compared to Moon?
Well, yeah, the game definitely is larger than Deliver Us the Moon. We of course, we have more people, we have more assets to create, we have more locations and some new things. So we went from Deliver Us the Moon, and we can take some of that stuff and reuse it a little, but we also want to make a new game, so it has to add on to that.
Yeah.
And of course, it's a new planet, so we have to make a whole new planet. I think as well, like on the length, especially on that one, it's like people wanted more. So we said like, okay, can we create a rich experience, but then also amp everything up? So we didn't use facial animation, for example, in the first one, but to really convey this narrative story and something that we are proven in Deliver Us the Moon, that we can really convey this mystery, this loneliness, but also kind of the narrative that you unravel along your play. We said, how can we even deepen that experience? So we really went full force on animation, mocap. So I would almost say on everything that you know from Deliver Us the Moon, we ramped it up. So in terms of game length, in terms of animation and narrative, in terms of gameplay. So some of the puzzles that you remember and environmental hazard for Moon, of course, they will return, something that the people like. But also we ramped up on that. So now we have a whole climbing mechanic in to even be a great addition to your whole journey. So
yeah, we've seen that with the axes, like Tomb Raider style. Yeah,
that's what we are going for. Like it needs to be this real rich astronaut experience that you're going into space. You need to feel that you have this whole adventure, and of course, like all the issues and problems that you encounter on your way. And it needed to be kind of an addition to it. So it's not so much of, hey, this is a sequel, kind of like a Taken 1 to Taken 2, and where you say, hey, this kind of worked, let's do it again, but maybe amp it up here and there. Really, on every front, we try to be a completely different game almost, but still be in the same realm of Deliver Us.
Nice.
Awesome. I was going to say, as well as the axes, of course, which we have seen, is there any other new mechanics that are in the game that we haven't seen yet?
What can we reveal?
That you can reveal.
I would say one of the biggest things is the climbing, and of course, like you see that a lot. We do have a little bit of a different system. So you need to be kind of skilled also to climb this wall and make sure that you really don't fall off. So it's not as an easy just grab on and you have to just make your way through it by movement, but you have to really be technical with your controller or with your keyboard and mouse. To make sure you don't fall. So there's a little bit of an urgency in the way you play actually these climbing sequences.
Yeah, and the better you get at climbing, the faster you can move through the level. Like on the video you now see, you can just let yourself drop a little bit, but if you're going too fast, you can't just pick up back up. So yeah, there's a little bit of a learning curve in climbing. It's not just stepping on the wall and moving around.
Yeah, a bit more of a survival element to the climbing as opposed to just essentially clicking on a button and climbing.
Exactly, yeah.
And then again with the puzzles, so the puzzles we ramp it up. So in the beginning it's a little bit more simple, and then we ramp it up and we use the MPT, so kind of the energy transmitter that you know from Deliver Us, but now in a more exploited way. So you need to solve all these puzzles to get your way through it. Kind of discover as well things that were blocked before. Maybe somebody sabotaged it or something. Like it's very intertwined with the narrative as well, why some things are blocked or not, and it's for you to find out what's going on.
Okay,
Yeah,
that sounds yeah.
And for example, all of the platforming, because we had a little bit of platforming in Deliver Us the Moon as well. You had to jump and everything. Well, we really upgraded our whole locomotion system. So the jumping and the climbing and clambering. So now if you just don't make a jump, you can still like grab on and climb on. So there's a bunch of smaller quality of life improvements to that as well that will really make it feel more real instead of missing your jump and then falling straight down.
Nice. Yeah, sounds like there's a lot of new stuff coming here. We've also seen from the trailers and some of the reveal stuff that the protagonist, Kathy, is her name, if I'm correct here, that she barely survived the crash on Mars at the beginning. And from the trailers, we've seen a lot of, at least in the trailers, it looked like there's a little bit more focus on her, like we had it in Deliver Us the Moon, where you were mostly alone and character building was probably not the main focus. So is this gonna change here in Deliver Us Mars? Will we see more character development from with Kathy here? And
no, we have a full cast for this one. So there was this whole casting process, and we were lucky enough to work with people that worked on Resident Evil, for example, or even Netflix. So Kathy, which is great, which is Elise Chappelle, who we casted. She was in Poldark from Netflix, for the people that know that. Nice. But it took a real while to really get to an emotion of it. Maybe in comparison to Moon, this is extremely expensive. So this is very hard on development to create something like that. It's really believable animation, mocap and stuff. So in a way, we also used a closed-off helmet in the first one because resources wouldn't let us to even portray something big as that we created now with Mars. But now we could. So there's a whole rich cast. There's this whole kind of family drama that takes to play, and Kathy's in the middle of that. You will witness a little bit from her past. You will witness a little bit about how she was as a child, and you would witness something, how she has kind of developed her motives in doing so, or why she is on Mars. It's maybe not only to find a solution for Earth and a solution for humanity, but maybe there's more of a personal interest to this as well. And that's, of course, very much of a close to the heart story, something that everybody with siblings or everybody with friends and loved ones could relate to. And especially if you tell a story like this, like Among the Stars, you want something close to the heart, something that can resonate with everybody that is just sitting in his room playing this game, that they can relate to this. That was very important to us.
Awesome. Story-wise, we are set a couple of years after Moon. On your homepage, I want to read from that. It says, after a mysterious distress call from Mars, join the Sapphire and its crew as the journey to the Red Planet seek to recover the Ark colony ship stolen by the mysterious Outward, and with them ensure the survival of humanity race. You already mentioned that it's not just this like epic quest, that it's a little bit also about the story of Kathy and her attachment to the story. So the scope of the story, or the way how the story was told in the first one, was very unique, where you could basically go through the entire game without really getting much about infos about the story. A couple of minor things you caught, but if you invested the time, like with the holograms and everything, is this going to be the same way, or will we see more cutscenes and everything? How is the story presented here?
Yeah, we definitely have a lot more ways to tell the story now. Since this is a bigger game, we can have better cutscenes. We have facial animations. We have motion capture. So these scenes are really played out. Of course, in the first game, you had some holograms that you would see and everything. We still have some of those. But there's also a lot more real people this time.
Yeah,
Because
okay.
in the first game, of course, you only had Rolf. But now, spoiler alert for anybody who hasn't played it.
Yeah.
But yeah, right now we have a lot more resources and experience also finally to create these kinds of experiences. So yeah, we're leaning a lot more on the actual visual storytelling with real people and faces and
yeah, it's there's. I think we recorded more than a full feature film on cinematics. So there is a lot in it, but not in the likes that you would say, it does ramp down from a game. Like we're not making a movie. As much as we are influenced by cinema, it needs to be a game. You need to play around, but it needs to be this play-by-play experience. So from this moment that you're climbing to solving a puzzle to having a cinematic of the narrative that goes a little bit deeper to a hologram. So we really try to to make the discovery there, but then also kind of have the player on the hook to say, hey, this is kind of interesting. Hey, there's a little bit of a lower beat. Oh, this becomes a little bit emotional. Hey, this is more frightening. And you kind of go on a play-by-play way through the game. Kind of similar what we did with Moon, only now amped up with kind of just bigger and just more extreme, more believable animations, more facial expressions, emotions. It's definitely going to be a roller coaster of drama and kind of the terror of these hazardous environments.
Nice.
I was going to say as well, the game, obviously, as it stands right now, looks absolutely phenomenal. And but what kind of technical improvements have you got included within this one? And what are you aiming to achieve in terms of its visual fidelity? Have you got advanced things like ray tracing included? Is it aiming for a specific frame rate? What are you aiming for on the technical side?
Well, that really depends on the platform, first and foremost, of course. Of course, PC will support, like, you, depending on your graphics card and CPU and everything, you can, of course, go up to whatever frame rate your PC can manage. But yeah, we're still working with Unreal Engine 4. It is literally the last possible UE4. So there's a few improvements that made their way from UE5 into UE4, like virtual textures, which is a very technical term for being able to split up textures in smaller parts, so you only load in the visible parts, and that's things we use. For example, the hair you can see here as well, that's also grooms, which is kind of experimental, but that's something we have, at least on PC, on the highest settings. And we're working on, of course, doing ray tracing again. Since in Deliver Us the Moon we had very extensive ray tracing support on PC. And for now we're looking at least ray tracing shadows. Translucency is hard to do, so I cannot make any promises on that. But yeah, of course, we want to be at the forefront of making a visually amazing game.
Yeah, I think we really pushed the roof of the ambition in creating the best experience for everybody as possible. But like Daniel's saying, it really depends on kind of what platform you're playing and what your computer is allowing. We will do some spec recommendations, of course, like on the Steam page. But no, we're pushing as hard as we can with everything that we have. Do consider we always are a rather small team creating something like this. We are pushing the boundaries to say, can we kind of touch base on AA, triple indie, while still being manageable, while still keeping the work-life balance in play. We really don't want to be crunching. We do our fair amount of overtime, but not something consistently. And that's something very important to us, that we create something that we also love to do here. We have a group of people, they all put their signature in this symbiosis, which becomes Deliver Us Mars. And it's important that we do this while we stay healthy. And if we all squeeze everything out to it to an extent where maybe the product will be extremely beautiful, but nobody really likes that they went through it, and nobody likes the journey, then I think we lost.
Yeah.
So till now, yeah, sure, we do our fair amount of overtime, but this is really more of a decision if we do so. But for now, it's very of a healthy work-life balance to create something like this and pushing kind of the highest fidelity as we can till now.
That's very good to hear. So we assume, judging, of course, from what we have seen so far from Keoken, that this is a big part for the studio, like great work culture. We've learned earlier, your interns didn't even want to finish their studies. That's really good to hear, because we've seen different things here across the industry. Good stuff here. Hang on, my question list just disappeared. Where did I want to go from here? There we go. Yeah, you already touched upon Unreal 4. So just a few weeks ago, we had a different indie developer on here from Song of Iron, who just made the jump over to Unreal 5. So what's the reasoning behind you guys staying with Deliver Us Mars for with Unreal 4 here?
Our main reasoning is we have a whole pipeline set up, of course, for asset creation and how rendering works and how we made our assets. And just upgrading to UE5 could happen, but we don't have that big of a tech team to facilitate all these changes, and then also have the delay of everybody learning to work with UE5. And so everything added together, it would just have taken us specifically, our team, a little too long. And we were feeling very confident that we could make a beautiful game just in UE4 27. So that's mainly the reason. For us, it didn't give enough benefit directly to make an even better game than it might have been.
No, it's also kind of the starting point. So for a lot of people, it's very easy to say, why don't you just flip it? It's like, why don't you make a Switch port, or why don't you make just a click on the button and export, go to PlayStation 5? It's a lot. Like we are creating, at this point, we are creating 5 platforms at once. We are in this odd position that we need to create the old gen, so it's like PlayStation 4 and Xbox One, while doing PC, also PlayStation 5, also Xbox Series X, which is 5 platforms all at once, which is rather insane for a studio our size. We are doing it. Then again, if you also want to do an update on an engine, I think at one point it could be beneficial. I think you wouldn't really witness this as a player to say, wow, I wish this was made now on this engine. But definitely the games forward will all be Unreal 5 engine. But this was just, you started at some point. It's more of like version control that you keep in check, that it wouldn't really make sense to do it. And the visual fidelity doesn't really bleed from it, from not choosing it right now.
Okay. Makes sense. If it doesn't fit the workflow, obviously it makes sense. And like you said, developing for this many platforms, I can imagine that there are a lot of challenges, and good stuff.
Yeah, that's one of the things I was thinking of as well, especially with the changeover. There was either one of two things, of course. You didn't feel like putting the time in at the moment to do that merge over to the new engine mid-development would have been beneficial for yourselves. But also, of course, no doubt, when you start a new project, you want to start it on that new engine and learn everything together. I think I would imagine that's probably what your thoughts are with Unreal Engine 5 as an engine anyway, going forwards, is whatever you do next time will be starting from
compromises.
Scratch.
You were saying it right. It's compromise. So you're weighing down kind of the pros and cons. And if it means that you have to, let's say you work with a team of 30 people or 35, everybody needs to change. And you have pipeline blocks as well, where maybe a few people are for a few weeks even not doing what you would like to do. And then it would sit kind of your development cycle in the way. So you wouldn't be finishing the things that you would like to finish. And therefore, it's not beneficial in that sense. But sure, if you can, and if you're starting out right now and you're using Unreal, definitely go for the newest one.
Yeah.
I can imagine. Since you already touched upon this, you're developing for a lot of different platforms, PC, last-gen consoles, PS4 and Xbox One, and current-gen consoles. A lot of our listeners are like always interested in a couple of the tech stuff. So how was the workflow with the new consoles? Are they easy to develop for? And what was basically the decision to make it a cross-gen release? Does it put a lot of additional work, or is it pretty easy to handle?
Well, where we started off is, of course, we start off with our PC builds. So we make it for PC and we target the highest quality we can get. And from there, you kind of trickle down. So you then try on a PS5, like you get the development kit and you try to play the game on there. And then after the first level, you're like, oh, damn, we're out of memory, you know? Because that's like a dev build and there's way too much going on. So then you're like, okay, we're going to tweak some settings, change some stuff. Then you try it again and it works. And then you go one step down to a PS4, for example. And then you're suddenly only working with about 5 gigabytes of RAM in total. So shared between CPU and GPU. And then you realize, well, we're using way too many assets and everything is linked together and there's like code linked there to there and assets linked from there and there. So then you start optimizing a bit and then lowering resolutions and all that stuff. And at some point, it runs. And then you can start tweaking things again. You can upgrade some stuff if you suddenly somewhere you find something that's referencing another level, for example. And then you're like, oh, wait, but now that means we have a whole bunch of things that should only be in that level also loaded in this level. So you find that, you kill that reference, and it doesn't get loaded into that level anymore. And you might suddenly have like 500 or 600 extra megabytes to work with suddenly. Yeah. And then you can up the quality again. And that's how our optimization workflow goes continuously. And it's relatively easy to develop for these consoles. Their SDKs, especially the old gen, PS4 and Xbox One, their workflows have been set in stone for so long. They're out and it's really very straightforward for both. For the next-gen consoles, there's a lot less documentation. But luckily, Unreal has a developer network, like a huge forum for developers, where you can just ask questions to the developers of Unreal themselves, or other developers could also be on there that have experience with developing for these consoles. And even if you can't find something there, there's a good chance you can just ask it on the specific PlayStation or Xbox forums that are also accessible for developers. And at some point, you will probably find your answers, because it doesn't happen a lot that, especially for PS4 and Xbox One, that somebody hasn't had your problem yet. And when you do, then you can still ask the direct person that has created that system, for example. So we had some issues with, I think, the virtual texturing on certain consoles. And we just asked, like, hey, we get this crash at this point. Why is this happening? And then they say, oh, yeah, I know that. I made this later, but now in UE5, this has changed. So if you want to get that, you can cherry pick that change and you can backport it to 427 and it should just work fine. So that's what we do. We take like a specific change from UE5 and we take that little piece of code and we put it in our UE 427 because they're not that insanely different in some senses, especially with virtual textures being tested in 427. So we can take those changes back and then it's fixed. So those are really fun things to figure out and then kind of make our own merging version of UE 427, which is like the bulk of everything we have is 427. But there's like tiny little specks of UE5 shining through.
It's a bit of a hybrid.
Sort of, yeah, but it's still 99.9% of UE420. So
Okay.
yeah.
Nice. And of course, we've seen a lot. We've spoke a lot about the visual changes and the technical changes on that aspect. But of course, from an audio perspective, is there any additional audio benefits you get on this new version of the game? Of course, play with on Mars.
Well, technically, we still use Fmod. So for the first game, we used Fmod, and now again, Fmod. We are, well, as far as I know, we have a lot of experience with it and good experiences as well. There have been some updates. We got an extra audio designer, Bus.
Yeah,
who's
full
really helping
time.
out a lot.
We got some additional team to it as well. It's a bigger, larger soundtrack. We really experimented with some kind of uses of Fmod as well to say how can you make certain environments sound different? Can we be a little bit more efficient with these things? And we went pretty wild with the system. Really tried to make the most of it, and some like audio geeky effects, like Doppler effects and stuff. And for everybody that knows that, we have been testing out a few things to say, hey, how does that sound? Space, unfortunately, doesn't have any sounds. Still, you can't put that in a game.
That's true.
So sometimes it's more of a kind of a feel that you need to create under these vacuum spaces.
Yeah, exactly.
And yet, in every sci-fi movie, you hear explosions in space, right?
Exactly, it's amazing. And for more audio things, like we have a whole reverb system we created together, but not with the people of Fmod, but inside Fmod. We would then have like 15 different types of reverb, and based on where a sound is being played, it will have a different reverb. Because most of the reverb in games is based on the listener, so where their camera is or where their character is, one of the two. But we wanted it to be a bit more realistic and feel more real. So we now have a system where if a sound plays inside a small room, you will hear it as if it's in a small room, even if you're slightly outside that room.
It will make a change on the kind of the reflections.
Yeah.
A lot of people would call it an echo, but it's actually reverb. It's similar for the people that are listening. It's like, wow, this is like way too audio nerdy. Think about kind of how a room sounds in a church. It sounds like with a huge kind of echo, while in a smaller room where there's a lot of let's say mattresses around you, it's kind of almost dead. So there's no really reflections coming if it gets absorbed by the wall.
Yeah.
So we played around a lot with that. So no, for the people that love soundtracks, love sound, man, you're in for a treat.
Looking forward to it. Yeah, we are almost at the end of our chance chat with you guys. But of course, there is a big question. I've been asked that up front to definitely ask this question, and it's about publishing. The game comes obviously to PC, PS4, PS5, Xbox One, and Series consoles. But since the first one came to Game Pass, a lot of people ask themselves, will we see this game on either Game Pass or PS Plus?
It's not something that we have committed to right now. We have a great relationship with PlayStation and with Xbox, so definitely could happen in the future, but it's not something that we committed to. So for now, it's all the consoles. So everybody that has these consoles, you can play it, and we'll see about Game Pass or PlayStation Plus or stuff. It's what I said. Great relationships with them, and nothing set in stone.
Sweet. Yeah. So, February 2nd. That's the date you have set in stone. That's like a little bit more than 2 months now. So, how are you feeling? You're good on track for the release. How is the feeling in the studio right now?
Pretty good.
I think it's pretty good. We're fairly relaxed, all of us. The extra month really gave us a lot of space to breathe, and it's really going to be an amazing game in my eyes. I love what we're doing, and I feel we're all very relaxed given that we're releasing in a few months.
Very optimistic. There's some cool press events coming in. There's
Cool.
a few. I almost dropped down kind of what it is, but I can't still yet. But there is no. We are very optimistic. This is going to be such a awesome experience, and in a way, it's nice that we had this extra time for extra polish to make it even a better, rich experience for everybody to play on. But it's also in the same light, so that we can't really wait anymore to share this with the world. Like, we have been developing this now for some time, and we have been playing and going around and around it, and we've seen it inside out. So at one point, you're really like, it's like you're bursting to make sure to launch this rocket into the abyss. Well, almost like for a little bit.
I can imagine. Yeah, so guys, if you haven't already, you know where to pre-order on console, and we make it very easy for you. You just click in the description of this YouTube show, and you will find the link to the Steam store and everything else, all the links to the socials and so on. Definitely make sure to wishlist the game. We've been saying it basically in every show we have a developer on, especially for indie games. Wishlisting on Steam helps them a lot. So definitely make sure to wishlist, pre-order, be excited. I am super excited for the game. Can't wait to play it.
I remember when it was first unveiled, Boxenberger, and the look on your face. So yeah.
Yeah, it's been we've done earlier this year. We've done a show dedicated to indie games and our most anticipated indie games, and this was my number one. So thank you, gentlemen, for coming on the show, chatting with us about Deliver Us Mars. Is there anything you want to let the audience know? When will we be able to see more of the game?
Oh, so definitely the 2nd of February, then you can you can play the whole game. But for everybody that's following the channels, of course, we are very transparent with our social media, trying to show a little bit like what's happening inside the studio, trying to convey as most as we can kind of what's going on. We're doing some streams as well. There is some very cool marketing beats coming. So if you just check out the socials, slowly but surely, there's like dropping a few cool beats where you're like, wow, okay, I can see a little bit more. We are dropping down little hints here and there, where for everybody that really can't wait for the 2nd of February, we'll be slowly getting a little bit of candy until that time.
Sweet. Yeah, so again, thanks for coming on. It's been an absolute blast to chat with you, guys. The game looks phenomenal. So yeah, thank you again for the time.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks for having us.
Thank you as well. Yeah, thanks for all the compliments.
Absolutely. No. And also, thank you everyone who watched us live here today or will be listening on the podcast services around the globe after the show ends. Of course, we will be back with the World of Gaming this Thursday with the regular edition of the show. But again, thanks so much to Keoken for coming on and giving us a chance to have this extraordinary episode of the World of Gaming. Guys, we will talk about everything that happened in gaming this week on Thursday. Until then, thank you so much, and I'll see you the next time. And don't forget to game on.